The night before my wedding, a young man stopped me at the entrance of the alley. "You must not marry Zhou Tingshen." I walked right past him, pretending not to hear. Zhou Tingshen was the newly appointed top scholar, the legitimate son of the Prime Minister. This was a good marriage that I had spent a whole year scheming to obtain. Where did this madman come from, daring to obstruct my marriage? "Yet," he shouted urgently from behind me, "Zhou Tingshen keeps a mistress and has an illegitimate child. The family prestige you toil half your life to build will all be making wedding clothes for others." These words were like a vicious curse, each one piercing my heart. I stopped in my tracks and turned around. "Why should I believe you?" His next words were astonishing. "Because I am your son whom you've never met." This matter was too absurd. So absurd that I thought he was a shill hired by some young lady specifically to break up my marriage. After all, Zhou Tingshen was a famous catch in the capital. Even before becoming the top scholar, he was already the Prime Minister's youngest and most promising legitimate son. Handsome in appearance, overflowing with talent, proper and courteous in his dealings, gentle as jade, after being appointed top scholar by the emperor, matchmakers practically wore down the doorstep. Having successfully gotten engaged to the Zhou family, I was a thorn in the eye and a splinter in the flesh of all noble young ladies. I was silent for a moment, still ignoring him. I turned to leave. The young man actually rushed up and grabbed my sleeve directly. "Mother, if you don't believe me, you will surely regret it someday." This cry of mother was so sincere and heartfelt that I nearly responded to him instinctively. I suppressed my temper and spoke gently. "You are not much younger than me. Don't go around calling me mother. It is only because I am kind-hearted. If it were someone else, having tarnished a woman's reputation, they'd have been dealt with by family law long ago." His cheeks flushed red with anxiety, his eyes brimming with tears. "I know why you insist on marrying Zhou Tingshen. The jade bracelet on your wrist was a gift from grandmother on her deathbed. Her lifelong regret was not seeing you marry a fine husband. So you put all your effort into marrying the best young man in the capital. But mother, think it through. Although Zhou Tingshen is outstanding, he is not a good match. Grandmother wanted you to marry a good man because she hoped you'd be happy and have a smooth life. Don't put the cart before the horse." My hand, habitually caressing the jade bracelet, suddenly stopped. Mother had indeed called me into her room alone before she passed away. Father was a good official, but not a good husband. He was always socializing, always rushing about, always scheming for the Marquis Manor's century-long prestige. He never once looked back at us mother and daughter. I was only 10, then young and naive, only remembering mother gripping my hands tightly. May, you must find a good husband in the future. Don't be like mother, looked down upon by other women." When she breathed her last, father was still busy with official duties. He didn't make it in time to see her one last time. Such secrets. No one else knew, except me. Me heart was filled with shock, but I still didn't dare to fully believe it. "When did he start keeping a mistress? 5 years ago." The youth spoke indifferently. He seemed to hate Zhou Tingshen to the core, his tone full of icy mockery. My heart suddenly clenched. It was that early, so he had never truly intended to marry me. That woman was of lowly birth, unfit to enter the Prime Minister's residence. But Zhou Tingshen treasured her like a pearl, always wholeheartedly scheming for her sake, until grandfather passed away and his position at court was secure. He cast you aside like a worn-out tool and secretly poisoned you. I stood frozen in place, as if struck by a bolt from the blue. A bone-chilling cold crept up from my back, and somewhere in the depths, a voice told me, this youth wasn't lying. "Then what about you?" I hastily pressed. He smiled self-mockingly. I found out he favored his concubine over his wife and plotted to murder his first wife. After gathering evidence, I was going to beat the Denguen drum. Before I could even set out, I was secretly killed by his men and thrown into a dry well. Then you now. I looked at the lively youth before me, warm with body heat, and was momentarily at a loss for words, but his gaze gradually darkened. "Mother, do you believe in gods and Buddha?" Heaven took pity and allowed me to return, and this time I won't let you suffer. My mind was in utter chaos. Both the Marquis's residence and the Prime Minister's residence were prominent households. The Emperor himself had bestowed this marriage, hosting a banquet for distinguished guests from the capital. The bridal procession would arrive first thing tomorrow morning. Time was pressing. How can you just say you won't marry and then not marry? I secretly brought the young man back to the Marquis's residence first. He curiously looked around my boudoir, seeming quite fascinated. Suddenly, his gaze stopped on the scattered paintings on the table. Mother, so your painting skills were already this refined when you were young? I was puzzled, he immediately explained. One year on the Empress Dowager's birthday, you personally painted a portrait as a gift for her. The features were lifelike, compassionate, and solemn, as if a bodhisattva had descended to the mortal world. That painting amazed everyone present, and the Empress Dowager loved it dearly. After saying this, he let out another soft sigh. But after returning to the residence, Zhou Tingshen harshly scolded you. He said women of the inner chambers should act with discretion, and showing off skills to vie for favor, like that is what women of the pleasure quarters do. My gaze turned cold in an instant. Zhou Tingshen was clearly suppressing me, unable to stand seeing me do well. What kind of husband in this world would compare his legitimate wife to pleasure house women? And he still calls himself a scholar. At this moment, I had not yet married, standing outside the situation, terrifyingly clear-headed. I didn't want to dwell on the rotten things that hadn't happened yet, and instead carefully examined the young man. His brows and eyes were actually quite similar to mine light brows and phoenix eyes, exuding a distant coolness. The only flaw was a fingernail-sized black birthmark on his left cheekbone. The young man seemed to sense something and hurriedly raised his hand to cover the birthmark, his awkwardness tinged with insecurity. I realized that this birthmark might have brought him bad memories. I didn't bring it up and asked him gently, "What is your name, Shu Zhao?" "Did I give you that name?" He nodded. In that instant, my heart melted into a complete mess. Zhao representing uprightness and integrity, a bright future ahead. I must have loved him dearly to give him this name filled with beautiful wishes and hopes. And my surname is Shui. We are mother and son, having nothing to do with that man. After pondering for a long while, I had my maidservant Yingge go to the kitchen to fetch me some peanut pastry. Both Shui Zhao and Yingge's faces changed drastically. Shui Zhao had already guessed my intention and hurriedly spoke up to stop me. "Absolutely not. Mother, you are allergic to peanuts. This is a matter of life and death." I said calmly, "It is too late to refuse the marriage. The only option now is to stall first. There aren't that many perfect solutions in this world. Mother knows what she is doing." "I know where that mistress lives. Let's set out right now. I remember that mistress's child is about my age. Perhaps she is already pregnant now, or even given birth." Xiao grew more excited as he spoke. "Once this matter is exposed, Zhou Tingshen's reputation will definitely be ruined. The wedding will fall through too. For young men from noble families, taking a bed, warming maid, or even visiting brothels before marrying their legal wife wasn't a big deal, but openly keeping a mistress crossed a fundamental line and was despised by all. Any family with a shred of decency wouldn't be willing to marry their daughter off to such a man. I understand what Shui Zhao did, but the real situation is far more complicated than this." I smiled bitterly. "You don't understand your grandfather at all. Never mind a mistress. Even if she really had a child now, he would only suppress the matter and send me off in the bridal sedan tomorrow morning, as if nothing happened. To him, a capable in-law family, the dignity of the Duke's mansion, are all more important than me, his own biological daughter. Back then, he didn't even see Mother one last time. So why would he ruin the marriage alliance for me?" Shui Zhao still wanted to speak, but I had already gulped down 2 pieces of peanut crisp. After eating most of it, I had Yingish throw away the rest, making sure not to leave any traces. After a long while, I felt a faint itching sensation on my body, and red swollen rashes appeared on my face and body. I was only 5 parts miserable but acted 12 parts, weakly collapsing onto the bed. "Inge, tell master that I am unwell. Go fetch a doctor." After father learned of this, He hurried over as expected. Hearing footsteps, I immediately pressed my knuckles hard against my throat. Me stomach churned the moment he stepped in. He was greeted by the sight of me vomiting up everything I had just eaten. He frowned in fury. "Who gave the young miss peanuts?" I said weakly. "Father, I didn't eat any peanuts. Perhaps someone deliberately mixed peanut powder into the food. I am afraid someone did this intentionally, but the wedding will indeed have to be postponed." He didn't respond, stepping forward to check on my condition. "Can you still stand? I'll find a maidservant to support you tomorrow." So it seems he is unwilling to postpone. I smiled bitterly. Your daughter can persevere, but I can't control my body. After speaking, I glanced at the mess on the floor. If at tomorrow's wedding, that would be making a fool of myself in front of all the guests. How could that be acceptable? His face was somber, and he didn't speak for a long while. Me whole body was tense, cold sweat trickling down my back. He looked around as if thinking about something. "See the doctor first. I'll go meet the Prime Minister now." I knew he had agreed, but the complicated look in his eyes before he left made my heart hang in suspense. He was a cunning old fox my petty tricks might have already been seen through, but he actually compromised. After the doctor prescribed medicine for me and left, Shui Zhao ran in from outside with reddened eyes. "Mother, why did you go this far?" I struggled to sit up, not wanting him to worry. "Don't worry, I was careful with the dosage. It won't cause any real harm. In desperate times, none must resort to extreme measures. Just like back then when I was trying to win Zhou Tingshan's favor, I was equally ruthless to myself. When we first met, his horse was startled while he was out hunting. At that critical moment, I rushed out from the side regardless of my life, grabbing the reins for him. I was dragged several jang by the horse, covered in wounds, utterly disheveled, just barely saving him. Zhou Tingshan still shaken. I had long heard of Miss Shui's excellent horsemanship, having the honor to witness it today. It truly lives up to its reputation. "It is just your injuries." I endured the intense pain and forced a pale smile. As long as young Master Zhou is unharmed, that is all that matters. Not leave Zhou Tingshan with a thrilling, unforgettable impression. Of course, all of this was my scheme. I had investigated his hunting schedule in advance and bribed the groom to drug the horse. The dosage of the drug, the timing of the horse's panic, precise down to the smallest detail. The ground there was soft, it looked painful, but there was actually no danger to my life. I had also secretly stationed guards in hiding, if things truly got out of control. Someone would have my back. But how did that compare to the impact of my shocking, gruesome injuries? I seemed to have grown used to it, always resorting to extreme self-inflicted suffering schemes to achieve my goals. I even found it exhilarating. After all, no one cared, or felt sorry for me anyway. "Mother, I care about you." As if hearing my inner thoughts, Shui Zhao half knelt by my bedside. Suddenly, a scalding hot tear splashed onto the back of my hand. Looking at Shui Zhao's worried face, I suddenly realized how stubborn and self-righteous I had been. So much so that I had overlooked this boy who crossed through time and space, coming solely for me. Grandfather, he actually cared too. My pupils suddenly contracted. Shui Zhao continued. "In your previous life, after you were murdered, Zhou Tingshan immediately gave you a grand burial. Grandfather rushed over, wanting to exhume the coffin and examine the body. He doesn't believe you would die of illness for no reason, and insists on investigating thoroughly. At that time, the Zhou family and the Shui family were at bitter odds, although Grandfather eventually yielded under pressure. He actually cared deeply for you. If what Shui Zhao said was true, I suddenly understood that look Father gave me before he left. It wasn't calculation and indifference after seeing through everything, but helplessness and worry for me. Shui Zhao lay sprawled by my bedside, watching over me the entire night. At the faint light of dawn, he quietly got up, helped Shui Zhao onto the bed, and covered him with the blanket. Father had been waiting for me in the study for quite a while. Seeing me come, he wasn't surprised at all. He sat upright in the armchair, emanating an invisible pressure. I lowered my head and confessed, I ate that peanut pastry on purpose. Father wasn't surprised. He let out a cold laugh. Shift the blame to someone with ill intentions. Create a diversion to buy time. He shook his head, Shumei. You are too naive. I kept a straight face, my tone stiff. I don't want to marry Zhou Tingshen anymore. Now you are using a self-inflicted injury scheme to refuse the marriage. This is utterly willful. I'd say it is because your mother left too early, with no one to discipline you, that you've grown into such a worthless person. Something in my heart seemed to be struck. My anger reached its peak at that moment, and I blurted out. You have no right to mention my mother. You don't care about mother, nor do you care about me. All you have eyes for is your career and power. When mother was deathly ill back then, you wouldn't even come back to see her one last time. Now who I marry, what does it have to do with you? Slap. The heavy sound of a slap echoed through the silent study. I saw stars, and half my face hurt so much. I almost lost all feeling. A trace of bright red faintly seeped from the corner of my mouth, tasting slightly salty. I couldn't collect myself for a long while. After hearing what Shui Zhao said, I clearly wanted to have a calm talk with father. But why did it end up like this again? Mother, Shui Zhao suddenly pushed open the door and rushed in. I immediately shielded him, questioning in a lowered voice. What are you doing here? Shui Zhao looked at father like a small beast on full guard, tense and angry. He knew full well it wasn't appropriate to come in at this moment, but he came anyway. She has her reasons for not marrying Zhou Tingshen. That Zhou Tingshen hasn't even married yet, but he is already secretly keeping a mistress, planning to use her up completely and then suck her dry to the bone. What is wrong with her not marrying that kind of person? Father looked at the two of us in shock, his usually confident expression suddenly cracking apart. What did he call you, mother? Father was indeed a powerful minister, always skilled at grasping the key point. I couldn't care about the pain and explained. It sounds unbelievable, but Zhao is indeed my child from my previous life. I recounted every detail of how I met him and how we recognized each other. Shui Zhao added at just the right moment, grandfather. You doted on Zhao the most. Every time I came back to the manor with mother, you would carry me to the study and let Zhao play with the little pinwheels and wooden horses that mother loved as a child. Those toys are still lying in your cabinet. Father suddenly trembled. The hand that had just struck me was now trembling almost imperceptibly. I also looked at him in great surprise, even sensing a hint of awkwardness. How did I not know about this? Shui Zhao even knew such secrets. Even though father had always despised talk of supernatural nonsense, he had no choice but to believe now. I cleared my throat, trying to break the awkward atmosphere. Father's chief attendant came in. He reported Master Zhou has come to visit. The expressions of all three of us instantly turned serious. Father resumed his calm and dignified demeanor, instructing composedly. Mia, returned to your room immediately. Remember, you are still ill. After speaking, he glanced at Shui Zhao. Zhou Tingshen's visit at this moment was definitely not as simple as checking on my illness. This man who had toyed with me in the palm of his hand in my previous life had an extraordinarily sharp instinct. I looked at my face that had just been slapped, still red and swollen with injuries. Me heart sank. I absolutely cannot let him see me like this. I immediately wiped clean the traces at the corner of my lips, took off my outer skirt, and lay back on the bed wearing only my inner garments. Ying rushed over anxiously. Miss, young Master Zhou and the master are heading this way. I thought to myself this was bad. Zhou Tingshen, that troublesome pest, really doesn't leave a moment to breathe. Father's voice came through first. Last night Maya suddenly fell gravely ill, vomiting and having diarrhea, her whole body red and swollen. It was quite dangerous. Missing the auspicious hour was our Marquis Manner's fault. We troubled young Master Zhou to come visit, but it wouldn't do if the sickness were passed on to you. Zhou Tingshen's gentle and refined voice came through. Mei Mei and I are about to become husband and wife. How could I care about such things? What I am most worried about is her well-being. As he spoke, the two had already stepped into the room. I pressed the side of my face that had been hit into the pillow, covering my face with one hand, while conveniently letting the rash show for them to see. Tingshen, Why have you come? My voice was panicked and embarrassed. Please leave quickly. Mia is sick right now. My face looks awful. I don't want you to see. How could I despise you for being sick? He feigned annoyance and actually wanted to come forward for a closer look. You and I have long been engaged. Why fuss over such trifles? Let me have a good look. How can I know if you are feeling better when you are covering your face? My heart tightened. If I really moved my hand away, wouldn't that expose everything? Father immediately stepped forward, half a step, seemingly casually blocking his line of sight. Though you two are engaged, it would still be best to mind proper etiquette. Zhou Tingshan put on a regretful expression and hurriedly apologized. It was my rudeness. I was anxious out of concern for Mei Mei and acted rashly in the moment. I hope the Marquis will forgive me, Father said indifferently. No matter. I coughed softly twice, appearing very weak. Having just argued with Father and taken a beating, my voice carried a hoarseness. Now it actually came in handy. Thank you for today, Tingshan. When I recover, I will certainly visit the Chancellor's residence in person. Zhou Tingshan glanced at me a few more times before finally taking his leave. That momentary standoff lasted but a breath. Yet my clothes were already completely soaked through. After Father saw him off, he called me and Shui Zhao over. This time he didn't mock my scheme. You showed some quick thinking at least. Even Shui Zhao could see the purpose of Zhou Tingshan's visit. He was testing us, Father nodded. Don't act rashly regarding the mistress matter. You too, Zhou Tingshan is already suspicious. If you alert him now, you'll never find that mistress. Having witnessed Zhou Tingshan's tactics, neither of us was overconfident anymore. This matter indeed required careful planning. Back in my room, I sat at the table lost in thought. Such a major matter as rescheduling the wedding, yet Zhou Tingshan showed no dissatisfaction at all, and instead remained resolute about marrying me. Who exactly is the hunter, and who is the prey? I thought myself skilled in manipulation, scheming back and forth. In the end, it was all like a joke. No wonder Zhou Tingshan agreed to the marriage. A self-righteous fool like me was simply the perfect target. Shui Zhao noticed my gloom and dejection and pushed the osmanthus cake on the table towards me. Mother, having some snacks will make you feel better. I sighed. Zhao, tell me, am I a complete failure? My relationship with Father is an utter mess. The man I longed to marry with all my heart wants me dead. And in the end, I couldn't even protect my own child, bringing grief to loved ones and joy to enemies. That is about right. That is not true at all. Shui Zhao looked at me earnestly. You are the best mother in the world. Half of my blood comes from Zhou Tingshan, yet I didn't become a villain full of malice like him. And that is all because of you, Mother. At that moment, it was as if light filled the empty crevices in my heart. I couldn't help but reach out and touch the birthmark on Shui Zhao's cheekbone. What exactly had this child been through to become so sensitive and fragile, yet kind and sincere? He flinched back sharply, as if burned. I couldn't help but ask him, Zhao, you seem to mind this birthmark a lot. He lowered his head and stayed silent for a long time, before finally speaking in a small voice. This birthmark has brought countless suffering to you and me. When I was born, Zhou Tingshan disliked this birthmark the moment he saw it, saying it was an ill omen. Every omen in the Zhou family is outstanding, yet I was born ugly. He even said I was a child of unknown origin that you had with another man. The osmanthus cake I had bitten into was instantly crushed to pieces in my grip. That heartless scoundrel. Zhou Tingshan didn't like me. The Zhou family avoided me like the plague. Only you, Mother, never cared about what others thought and treated me like a precious treasure. And grandfather. At this point, Shui Zhao's voice nearly choked up. When I was little, what I looked forward to most was going back to the Shui family with you. He was already thin and now hunched over. He looked even more pitiful. My eyes instantly turned red. Shui Zhao immediately suppressed his choking voice and gently tugged at my sleeve. Mother, don't be sad. I figured it out long ago. Zhou Tingshan never loved us mother and son, so everything we did was wrong. It had nothing to do with this birthmark. But grandfather is different. He loves you, And he loved grandmother too. I wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes and patted Shui Zhao's head. Don't listen to Zhou Tingshan's nonsense. Your birthmark is not an ill omen at all. This is the mark mother gave you so that I can recognize you in every lifetime. That night, Shu Zhao and I talked about many things. Even though I didn't give birth to him in this life, it felt like I had walked through his journey of growing up with him once again, until Yingej quietly walked in. Miss Young Master, the master is calling you both to the study. Father got straight to the point. Zhou Tingshan is more cautious than we imagined. I sent people to investigate, but the place was already empty. Shui Zhao was speechless. The information he had worked so hard to bring was now useless. Father noticed his dejection. No need to be discouraged. Zhou Tingshan being this nervous actually reveals a flaw. Shui Zhao and I suddenly looked up, our expressions and movements identical. Father couldn't help but let a hint of a smile show in his eyes. Grandfather, where do we start? He actually dropped the outer part and just called him grandfather directly. Father didn't correct him and actually seemed quite pleased. If it were just an ordinary mistress, why would he need to be this cautious? Zhou Tingshan is concealing too much. I now suspect that woman's identity is extraordinary, not an ordinary commoner. Shui Zhao's eyes lit up. Grandfather, you are so clever. Father could barely suppress the corners of his mouth, his tone carrying a hint of indulgence. Then Zhao, take a guess. What exactly is that woman's background? I was instantly caught between laughter and tears. So it turns out my father actually knows how to dote on children. I've truly lived these 10+ years in vain, not even as good as Shui Zhao at winning his favor. Sure enough, Father immediately turned his gaze to me, becoming stern again. Don't just stand there. Use your brain and think too. You are not even as good as a child. Shui Zhao, however, was now seriously analyzing based on the clues Father had given. Ruling out ordinary commoner women, because there is no need to go through such trouble to hide them. Ruling out women from the pleasure quarters, same reason as above. Also ruling out noble ladies of status, he could simply marry one as his legal wife. So why bother marrying mother? Shui Zhao suddenly froze, saying incredulously, could it be the daughter of a convicted official? That would make sense, wouldn't it? If this woman had a clean background, he could have just taken her into the manor as a favored concubine. Why did he have to wait for the old prime minister to die? I suddenly understood and continued. Because she would implicate the lives of everyone in the Zhou household as long as the old prime minister was alive. He would never allow him to do such a reckless thing. Father nodded with satisfaction. Zhao's analysis makes sense. I'll go investigate all the family members of convicted officials of suitable age from the past decade. Grandfather, there is no need for such trouble. I remember what that woman looks like. Shui Zhao spoke up clearly. After saying that, he winked at me, full of vibrant, youthful energy. I instantly understood what he meant. This was probably the unspoken understanding between mother and son. I immediately volunteered. I can paint, let me do it. Father spread out the rice paper for me, in my memory. This was the first time I painted in his study. Shui Zhao's voice came slowly from beside me. She has a pair of almond-shaped eyes, a very pointed face, and a red mole between her brows. An unprecedented tranquility enveloped me. It turned out that everything I had schemed and calculated for with all I had already possessed all along. As the final stroke fell, a delicate and beautiful woman came to life on the paper. Shui Zhao's face was full of joy. Yes, that is her. Father and I exchanged a glance, showing relieved smiles. As long as we can verify this woman's identity and solidify the evidence, not only can we break off the engagement, we can also doom Zhou Tingshan beyond redemption. But Father suddenly spoke up. Zhao, you go out first. I have something to say to your mother. Shui Zhao knew about the relationship between Father and me, and stood there hesitating. After being stunned for a while, he still lowered his head and walked out. I knew Father had something to say to me alone. He glanced at the painting on the table, his gaze becoming distant. Your mother, was also a famous talented lady in the capital back then. You two are very alike in personality, headstrong, stubborn, never willing to admit defeat. Ever since Mother passed away, the relationship between Father and me had frozen to the breaking point. This was the first time he directly mentioned Mother to me. Before marrying Father, Mother had also been renowned throughout the capital. Though a woman, she harbored brilliance in her heart and wisdom in her mind. She had her pride, but after marrying Father, she was neglected in the back courtyard, never living the harmonious life she had dreamed of. The noble ladies she once looked down upon mocked her in secret. What talented lady can't even win her husband's affection? She is just a bitter wife, that is all. She seemed trapped, melancholic all day long. I didn't respond, afraid we'd start arguing again once I opened my mouth. When your mother was gravely ill back then, ... It wasn't that I intentionally didn't come back. He chose his words carefully, his tone carrying a cautiousness I had never seen before. I was framed by political enemies. The situation was critical. If I couldn't break through, the entire Marquis Manor would have fallen. My, the Marquis Manor may seem like flowers embroidered on brocade, oil thrown on flames. But every step we take is on a knife's edge. One wrong move and there is no coming back. Once I chose not to be an idle rich man from the start, there was no turning back. I've wronged your mother, but my feelings for you two were never the slightest bit false. If Father had explained this to me when Mother passed away, I definitely wouldn't have believed him. I would have dismissed it as an excuse. But after being schemed against and dying miserably in my past life, in this life I've unraveled Zhou Tingshan's conspiracy step by step. I understand Father now. The court is treacherous and ever-changing. People's hearts are wicked. One truly has no control over anything. Fate is a good storyteller. It sent Shui Zhao back to my side. The hatred for Zhou Tingshan seems insignificant now. What I am more grateful for is having such wonderful family. The heavens have never been unkind to me. Pushing the door open and stepping out, Zhao was standing under the magnolia tree in the courtyard waiting for me. Mother, are you okay? I teased him. You were eavesdropping again. He quickly explained. I wasn't eavesdropping, I was waiting for you. I couldn't help but laugh brightly, putting my arm around his shoulders as we walked out together. The karma from my past life should come to a conclusion too. Father acted decisively on his end and quickly discovered the mistress's true identity. So she is actually Wang Shuyan's daughter. In that case, his family truly does have quite a connection with the Prime Minister's residence. Wang Shuyan was the former Minister of Revenue, executed for embezzlement. All 200 members of the Zhou household were thrown into prison and exiled. Wang Shuyan's daughter, Wang Qinying, was supposed to be sent to the Court of Entertainment, yet she'd rather die than submit, throwing herself into the water to prove her resolve. It seems Zhou Tingshan secretly saved her. Father nodded. Back then, the Zhou and Wang families were neighbors. The two of them must have been childhood sweethearts. Wang Qianying is now pregnant, placed by Zhou Tingshan in a nunnery on the outskirts of the city. I've already sent people to secretly surround and guard it. Upon hearing the word nunnery, Shui Zhao's expression shifted slightly. No wonder. I looked over in confusion. In my past life, after grandmother passed away, Zhou Tingshan set up a longevity tablet for her at a nunnery on the outskirts of the city. Every festival he would accompany you, mother, to pay respects and pray. Everyone praised him for being righteous and filial, but it turns out ... it turns out, my heart was already completely calm. It really does fit Zhou Tingshan's nature, using the pretense of honoring my mother as a cover to hide the fact that he was secretly meeting his mistress. No wonder even all the gods and Buddhas couldn't stand to watch. Father's tone also turned cold as a blade at this moment. In 3 days at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, we'll expose this sanctimonious hypocrite in front of His Majesty and all the court officials. Soon the time came. The Empress Dowager's birthday banquet was a grand event, with all civil and military officials bringing gifts to offer congratulations. After everyone finished presenting gifts and was about to start the performances, Father suddenly stepped forward. This subject is so bold as to accuse the newly appointed top scholar Zhou Tingshan of harboring the daughter of a convicted criminal. I ask your majesty and the Empress Dowager to judge clearly. The court officials erupted in an uproar. The show father brought was far more eye-catching than any other, the emperor said in a deep voice. This is a serious matter. Do you have evidence, my dear minister? Naturally. At father's command, the guards quickly escorted a nun forward. This person is the abbess of a nunnery on the city outskirts. Back when the Wang Shuian embezzlement case broke out, Zhou Tingshen pulled a secret switch, saved Wang Qinying, and placed her in the nunnery on the city outskirts. The abbess fearfully glanced at Zhou Tingshen, whose face had turned ashen, but ultimately nodded firmly. What the Marquis said is true. Wang Qinying is with child and has been staying at my nunnery to nurture her pregnancy. The crowd erupted in an uproar, whispering among themselves. So she is actually Wang Shuian's daughter. I heard he embezzled 100,000 taels of silver back then. No wonder the marriage between the Shui and Zhou families was delayed. The Marquis is truly wise. Zhou Tingshen loudly refuted. This is a frame-up. Just bringing some random nun to accuse me of harboring a criminal's daughter. Isn't this too much of a farce? With that, he turned to father. Marquis, if you look down on the Prime Minister's household, you could simply come to break off the engagement. Why resort to such tactics that harm others without benefiting yourself? Seeing Zhou Tingshen so confident and fearless, father secretly thought this was bad. To avoid alerting the enemy, he had only sent people to control the nunnery, but hadn't captured Wang Qinying. He had secretly used both carrot and stick to force the abbess to testify. Zhou Tingshen was so confident could he have a backup plan, and already moved Wang Qinying without anyone noticing. While the two were at a standstill, I suddenly stepped forward. This subject still has a witness. My sudden intervention immediately changed the situation. Father's eyes were full of worry as he looked at me, as if saying, "What are you doing here?" I calmly said, "Bring Wang Qinying forward." The moment these words came out, Zhou Tingshen's face changed drastically. Wang Qinying had been well cared for these years, her belly slightly swollen, her skin fair with a rosy glow. Only there was a faint sorrow between her brows. Seeing her, Zhou Tingshen could no longer control his emotions and let out a low cry. Wang Qinying. So it turns out the ruthless and cold-hearted young Master Zhou also has an untouchable soft spot. Wang Qinying met his gaze, her eyes full of complex emotions. She finally hardened her heart, turned away, and knelt down. "We're reporting to your majesty. This guilty woman, Wang Qinying, is the daughter of the late minister Wang Shuian. Back then, this guilty woman was disheartened and wanted to end her life. It was young Master Zhou who saved me, and I've survived under his protection until now." His Majesty did not interrupt, but quietly watched her, waiting for her to continue. "All these years, this sinful woman has lived like a rat in the gutter, never seeing the light of day. Young Master Zhou gave me food and clothing, offered me affection, and this sinful woman is deeply grateful. But all of this was ultimately stolen. This sinful woman cannot bear to watch young Master Zhou make mistake after mistake. For my sake, he placed the Prime Minister's residence under the blade and used Miss Shui, intending to ruin the rest of her life. Every time this sinful woman thinks of it, I cannot sleep at night. Your Majesty Empress Dowager, every word this sinful woman has spoken is true. I came forward today not to testify against anyone, nor to repay kindness with enmity. I just want to accumulate good karma for the child in my womb, leave a way out so that they can live the rest of their life with a clear conscience. This entire segment is absolutely peak drama. In those mansion intrigue novels I used to read, the legal wife and the mistress were always fighting to the death, trapped in an endless cycle of female rivalry. Although Wang Qinying was the mistress kept hidden in the shadows, her moral compass is spot on. Zhou Tingshen's self-righteous deep affection and redemption were actually built on sacrificing another innocent woman's life. Wang Qinying stepped forward, not just for her child, but to uphold her own bottom line as a human being. This counterkill is absolutely brilliant. You can trap me with material things and feelings, but you can't insult my intelligence and conscience. Zhou Tingshen thought he had everything under control, but ended up getting the table flipped on him by two victimized women working together. So satisfying. Zhou Tingshen looked as if his soul had been drained, no longer showing any of his earlier vigor and confidence. He didn't struggle or get angry, his expression full of sorrow. Wang Qianying, why didn't you tell me sooner? Actually, everything I did was just to make you happy. After saying this, he turned and glared at me viciously. Shemei, you've ruined everything for me. Even if I fall into the abyss, I'll drag you down with me. But I felt not the slightest bit of fear at that moment. I realized Zhou Tingshen was actually just like me, also a stubborn, obstinate fool. Asking why the bodhisattva sits facing backward, sighing that all beings refuse to turn back. But I was luckier than him. I waited for my Zhaoa, while Zhou Tingshen would spend the rest of his life in endless suffering. At the end of the birthday banquet, His Majesty also made the final ruling. The newly appointed top scholar Zhou Tingshen, for harboring a criminal woman, is hereby stripped of his title. His engagement with the Shui family is annulled, and he is sentenced to exile 3,000 li away. Prime Minister Zhou Shufa, failing to discipline his son and manage his household properly, is stripped of his position as Grand Councillor and shall retire to his hometown. As for you, Wang Qianying, considering your sincere repentance, you are spared from exile. By special pardon after giving birth, you shall be placed in the palace weaving bureau as a servant, never to leave for life. Everyone praised His Majesty's wisdom and benevolence. I let out a long sigh of relief, wanting to go home with father, but his stare made my heart uneasy. Well, Shui Mei, going behind my back to act on your own. Do you know how risky this was? If Wang Qianying had firmly stood by Zhou Tingshen, all our efforts would have been for nothing. She wouldn't, I said softly. As a fellow mother, I know she wouldn't. That day, after finishing the discussion with father, Shui Zhao told me a secret that was enough to overturn my thoughts. Mother, I don't think Wang Qianying is necessarily a bad person. After hesitating for a long time, he spoke softly. After Zhou Tingshen secretly harmed you. I was so furious. I nearly went mad, wanting to perish together with him. But at the study door, I heard him and Wang Qianying arguing. Wang Qianying was crying so hard she could barely breathe, saying she never intended to enter the manor as the main wife. Yet Zhou Tingshen took an innocent woman's life. How was she supposed to live with herself? I remained silent for a long time, then made a startling decision. I wanted to see Wang Qianying. On the night before the birthday banquet, I disguised myself as a nun and snuck into the nunnery. Wang Qianying wasn't surprised to see me. You know me. Her expression was calm. What is meant to come will always come, won't it? Miss Jodo, you truly understand Zhou Tingshen. Zhou Lang has 1,000 faults, but he has treated me well. My gaze was sharp. What about the child in your belly, born stepping on others' blood and bones? Is this what you want? Zhou Tingshen indeed has his methods, but can you guarantee he'll win every time? Can you and your child bear these consequences? Wang Qianying stepped back half a step from my questioning, a bitter smile on her face. If not for the child, why would I be willing to cling to life? I said bluntly. Identify Zhou Tingshen, and I'll ensure the child in your womb remains safe. Yet, she asked me in return, Miss Xu, you've never been a mother. How could you understand my feelings? Wang Qianying's eyes were dry and weary, full of exhaustion. I am tired. Zhou Lang is good, but he never asked whether I wanted it, whether I was willing. His love is too heavy. I can't bear it, and neither can the child. I understand. I looked at her calmly, my gaze sincere. The Shui family will adopt this child, letting him live openly under the sun, becoming an upright and kind person, just like my Zhaoa, and I did indeed keep my promise. I brought Wang Qianying back to the Shui residence, letting her await childbirth in peace. Everything settled down. The 3 generations of us finally breathed a sigh of relief, happily gathered around the table to eat. Father raised his cup first. Neither of you drink, so I'll use tea in place of wine to celebrate this great victory. Shui Zhao sipped his tea, but looked deeply troubled. He asked me, Mother, what are your plans for the future? His question caught me off guard. I really hadn't thought about it, so I pinched his cheek. Of course, to stay with our Zhaoa. I still want to see you marry and have children. Mother, have you never thought about yourself? He looked at me quietly. For some reason, I felt a strange illusion, as if the next moment he would leave me. Mother, in your past life your paintings were priceless, yet you willingly gave it all up to cook and stay by my and Zhou Tingshan's side. You deserve a broader world. Who says a woman must marry and bear children confined to a small square of sky? I want you to see the famous rivers and mountains, see all walks of life, and paint your own magnificent story that is your life. Shui Zhao spoke word by word with a smile, but the outline of the young man before me gradually became transparent and blurry. I hurriedly reached out to grab him, but grasped at nothing. Zhao, our father, and I abruptly stood up, our faces filled with anxiety. A thought flashed through my mind in an instant. I spoke with a trembling voice. You knew all along. You knew all along, didn't you? All the pieces connected at that moment. If I don't marry Zhou Tingshan, there will be no Shui Zhao in this world. He knew all along that he would disappear. Yet he still came without hesitation. I knocked over the bowls and chopsticks, tears rolling down like broken beads. For you, I do this willingly, he murmured softly. Being able to see you reconcile with grandfather with my own eyes, to see Zhou Tingshan get the punishment he deserves, that is enough. His voice began to falter, his figure like thin mist. My greatest regret in my past life was failing to protect you. Now that my wish is fulfilled, I have no more regrets. Zhao. My thoughts were in chaos. At this moment, I couldn't care about anything else, just kept calling his name over and over. Helplessly, I watched him dissipate into the void, bit by bit, until that final second, Zhao seemed to use all his strength to reach out his hand toward me. Mother, promise me. Every day from now on, you must smile. I frantically reached out to grab him, but where he stood, only emptiness remained. Father, I finally couldn't hold back and burst into tears, throwing myself into his arms. Father turned his head, quietly wiping away the faint glimmer of tears. Mia, look forward. Don't let Zhao's visit be in vain. Later, I listened to Zhao's words and packed my bags to see the mountains and rivers of this world. I visited many temples, devoutly praying and giving thanks before the Buddha. Everyone knew there was someone surnamed Xue who excelled at painting Guanyin statues. The paintings were so lifelike, priceless, and nobles all took pride in collecting them. On Guanyin's birthday, as usual after praying and offering incense, I slowly walked out. Meow. The faint cry caught my attention. I turned to look, and a cat affectionately rubbed against my feet. It nuzzled coquettishly. I crouched down and reached out to stroke its chin. The kitten was pure white all over, except for a tuft of black fur on the left side of its cheek. I felt as if I had been struck by lightning. Zhao, that you, Zhao? Passers-by watched me talking to myself at a cat, giving me looks like I was a mental patient, but I didn't care at all, and just picked it up. The cat was very well behaved, didn't struggle, and didn't scratch. It just kept meowing non-stop. I couldn't help but touch that tuft of black fur. This was the mark I gave to Zhao. Lifetime after lifetime, I would recognize him. You keep meowing, you must be hungry. Let me find you something to eat first. I held the cat in my arms, as if I had found a lost treasure. Now it is my turn to protect you. I won't let you suffer even the slightest grievance. Come on, let's go home. This story really made me cry so hard. The emotional impact hit so strong. Fam, there is so much warmth and powerful core messages hidden within. First, I want to talk about ultimate love and redemption. Shui Zhao, this boy with a birthmark who suffered endless cold stares in his past life, risked everything to travel through time and start over, not to give himself a better life, not even to survive. He knew full well that if I don't marry him, there will be no more Shui Zhao in this world. Yet he still used the erasure of his own existence in exchange for his mother regaining freedom. True love is selfless, and when the female lead finally holds that little white cat with black fur tightly, it is also fate's gentlest echo to this great familial love. Love always has an echo. Secondly, about woman's self-worth. What Shui Zhao said before disappearing was truly the sublime moment of the entire story. Who says women must marry and bear children, confined to a square patch of sky. I want you to see the famous rivers and mountains, to see all walks of life. In that era, the female lead initially tried her hardest to marry the top scholar, thinking that was life's most perfect stepping stone and destination. But in reality, she possessed exceptional painting skills, and a clever mind. Her stage should have been the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas. This is also the author using Jawa's voice to remind every girl in real life: don't tie your life's value solely to finding a good partner or having a good marriage. Your worth is far more than your relationship status, your talents, your dreams, the world you've seen. These are the most dazzling medals on you that no one can take away. Finally, I want to say to all the girls out there, whether you face barriers with your birth, family like the female lead and her father, or encounter someone like Zhou Tingshen who wrapped selfishness in the guise of love, don't lose yourself, and definitely don't hurt yourself in exchange for anything. Be a little braver, keep a clear head, and keep smiling. Just as Shui Zhao hoped, from now on, every single day, we should smile from the heart. Go paint your own magnificent story. This tear-jerking yet heartwarming story we've read together ends here. Remember to like and give me a hug. I am Elena. See you in the next story.